You can put lipstick on a pig, but it is still a pig. I have said that 1,000 times, and usually people chuckle because it is a funny visual. But when I looked at Jenna walking onto my stage, the humor was the last thing on my mind. She was dressed to the nines, impeccable hair, a designer bag on her arm that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments, and shoes that looked like artwork. She walked with a strut, a defiance that screamed confidence. But I have been in this business long enough to know that the fortress with the highest walls is usually guarding the most fragile treasure. Jenna wasn't walking in here to get help. She was walking in here to win an argument. She was wearing her armor, quite literally, in the form of silk and high-end leather, convinced that if she just looked the part of a successful, put-together woman, I wouldn't be able to see the absolute chaos that was consuming her life from the inside out. People talk about retail therapy like it is a cute little hobby, a pick-me-up on a Tuesday afternoon. But what I was seeing with Jenna was not therapy. It was an addiction, pure and simple. And it was dismantling her family brick by brick while she was busy worrying about the color of the grout. Jenna is 34 years old, a mother of 2 beautiful children, and she is drowning. She isn't drowning in water, she is drowning in debt. $70,000 of it to be precise. And that is just the number her husband, Mark, knows about. Mark wrote to me because he is at the end of his rope. He is a contractor, a guy who works with his hands, sweats for every dollar he brings home, and he watches those dollars evaporate the second they hit their joint account. He told my producers that he wakes up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, terrified that the repo man is going to take his truck, terrified that they are going to lose the house, all because Jenna needs to project an image of a perfect, affluent life that simply does not exist. But when you talk to Jenna, which is exactly what I intended to do, you get a very different story. This is the side of the story she wanted to tell. To hear her tell it, she isn't the problem. The problem is Mark's lack of ambition. The problem is the pressure of society. The problem is that she deserves these things because she works hard raising those kids. It is a classic case of cognitive dissonance. She is setting the house on fire and then complaining to me that it is getting a little warm in the living room. When I sat down across from her, the first thing I noticed was the deflection. I asked her a simple question about the credit card statements, and she immediately pivoted to how unsupportive her mother, Brenda, is. Now, Brenda is a whole other chapter in this book, a critical, anxious presence in Jenna's life, but you have to look at the immediate mechanism. Jenna is using spending as an anesthetic. It is a way to numb out. I always say you cannot change what you do not acknowledge, and Jenna was acknowledging absolutely nothing. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Dr. Phil, looking good makes me feel good, and what is wrong with wanting the best for my family?" That is the hook she hangs her hat on. She has convinced herself that buying $200 rompers for her toddlers and leasing a luxury SUV they cannot afford is an act of love. It is not love. It is insecurity masquerading as affection. It is a desperate attempt to buy an identity because the one she has feels insufficient. The tension backstage before we even started taping was palpable. My producers told me that Mark was pacing the hallway, looking like a man marching to the gallows, while Jenna was in the makeup chair complaining that the lighting wasn't flattering enough. That dynamic right there tells you everything you need to know about the power balance in this marriage. Mark has become a hostage in his own life. He has surrendered his financial agency to keep the peace. But the peace is a lie. It is a truce bought on credit with 20% interest. And Jenna, she views Mark not as a partner, but as an obstacle. Every time he says no to a purchase, She hears, "You're not worth it." That is the translation error happening in her brain. She equates spending with value. If she spends 0, she is a 0. If she spends 1,000, she feels like 1,000 at least for the 10 minutes until the buyer's remorse kicks in, which she then has to shove down with another purchase. It is a cycle of shame and gratification that spins faster and faster until the wheels come off. I needed to understand where this hole in her soul came from. People aren't born thinking that a logo on a handbag is the equivalent of self-worth. That is a learned behavior. It is a script written somewhere in childhood. So I started digging into her history, peeling back those layers she had so carefully lacquered over. Jenna grew up in a household where love was transactional. Her father left when she was 6, leaving a void that sucked the oxygen out of the room. Her mother, Brenda, worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. On the surface, that sounds like a story of resilience, and it is. But for a 6-year-old girl, the interpretation was different. Brenda was stressed, tired, and often short-tempered. She didn't have time for bedtime stories or long talks. But on birthdays and Christmas, Brenda went overboard. She would pile presents high to compensate for the time she couldn't spend. Jenna learned very early on that "I love you" looks like a wrapped box. She learned that material objects are the apology for emotional absence. Fast forward 30 years, and you have a woman who doesn't know how to soothe herself or connect with others without a price tag attached. She is essentially that 6-year-old girl waiting for the pile of presents to feel safe. But knowing the why doesn't fix the what when the what is about to bankrupt you. We put up a graphic on the big screen. It's something I like to do to force reality into the room. It showed their monthly income versus their monthly outflow. The outflow bar was nearly double the income bar. The audience gasped. It is a visceral reaction when you see the math staring you in the face. Mark put his head in his hands. He couldn't look at it. But Jenna? She squinted at the screen and said, "Well, that includes the investment pieces." I had to stop the tape for a second in my own head and just marvel at that word, investment. She called a closet full of depreciating assets investments. This is the level of delusion we were dealing with. She truly believed that if she just curated the perfect lifestyle, eventually the money would follow. It is magical thinking. It is the idea that if you dress for the job you want, the paycheck will just magically appear in your bank account without the work. I looked at her and said, "Jenna, you are eating the seeds instead of planting them." The conversation shifted to the hidden accounts. This is where the betrayal really sits. Mark thought the debt was bad, but he didn't know about the secret credit cards. My team had done the forensic accounting. We always do our homework, and we found 3 cards where the statements were going to a P.O. box. When I revealed this, the air just went out of the room. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about infidelity. Financial infidelity is just as destructive as sexual infidelity because it destroys the same thing, trust. Mark looked at her, and for the first time, I saw anger replace the exhaustion. He asked her, "How could you?" And her response was telling. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "I messed up." She said, "I did it because I knew you'd freak out and try to control me." There it is, the victim card. She turned her deception into a defense against his alleged control. She made him the villain of her secret life. I looked at Mark, and I could see the man was vibrating with frustration. He was a tea kettle about to whistle, and Jenna was just turning up the heat. When she accused him of being controlling because he wanted to know where thousands of dollars were disappearing to, she was using a classic gaslighting tactic. It is a defense mechanism designed to make the reasonable person feel crazy. I turned back to Jenna, leaning forward in my chair, resting my elbows on my knees. I needed to cut through the noise. Jenna, I said, keeping my voice low and steady, you don't lie to the people you love to protect yourself from the consequences of your own behavior. That isn't fear of control, that is fear of accountability. You are hiding those cards because you know that what you are doing is destructive, but you are addicted to the rush of the purchase more than you are committed to the honesty of your marriage. She crossed her arms, a physical barrier she was erecting between us. You don't understand, she insisted, her voice rising an octave. He doesn't let me breathe. Every time I walk in the door, it's how much was that? Or do we need that? It's suffocating. I just wanted a little piece of my life that wasn't under a microscope. So you bought your freedom at 19.99% APR, I ask? That's not freedom, Jenna. That's a cage. And you're dragging your husband and your children into it with you. This was the moment to bring in the third leg of this unstable stool, her mother Brenda. I had met Brenda briefly backstage, and let me tell you, the apple didn't fall far from the tree, it fell right at the roots and rotted there. Brenda walked out, applause sign flickering, but she didn't look at the audience. She looked straight at Jenna's shoes. Not at her daughter's face, but at her shoes. I noted that immediately. Brenda sat down next to Mark, effectively isolating Jenna on the other side of the stage setup. The body language was screaming loud and clear. Brenda, you've heard what we're talking about here. Mark says they are drowning. Jenna says she's just trying to maintain a standard. What do you say? Brenda sighed, a long, dramatic exhale that seemed to suck the air out of the studio. I've told her, Dr. Phil, I have told her 1,000,000 times she spends too much. She doesn't listen. She thinks money grows on trees. When she was little, she always wanted the biggest doll, the shiniest bike. I tried to teach her value, but she just has this hunger. I held up a hand. Now, hold on a second. You say you tried to teach her value, but my producers tell me that last week, when Jenna was crying to you about Mark threatening divorce over the credit card bill, you took her out to lunch and bought her a $400 purse to cheer her up. Is that true? Jenna looked down. Brenda stiffened. Well, Brenda stammered. Smoothing her skirt, she was upset. A mother hates to see her child upset. And it was on sale. It was an investment piece. There was that word again. Investment. It was a virus in their vocabulary. So I said, looking from mother to daughter, you are criticizing the fire while you are pouring gasoline on it. You are modeling the exact behavior you claim to despise. You taught her that emotional regulation comes from a transaction. When you feel bad, you buy something. When you want to celebrate, you buy something. When you are bored, you buy something. Jenna isn't doing this in a vacuum, Brenda. She is following the roadmap you drew for her. Jenna looked up then, and for a split second, the defiance cracked. She tells me I look tired if I don't have new makeup. Jenna said quietly. She comes over and checks my house, and if I don't have the latest decor, she asks if Mark is struggling to find work. She makes me feel like if I don't have the stuff, I'm failing. I do not, Brenda shot back, defensive now. I just want you to have nice things. I want you to be proud of your home. There is a difference between being proud of your home and being a slave to it, I interjected. And right now, this family is enslaved to an image. But we need to look at the escalation here. Mark, you told me there was an incident last month that made you realize this wasn't just about clothes and purses anymore. Tell Jenna what you found. Mark shifted in his seat, wringing his hands. He looked at his wife with a mixture of pity and terror. Jenna, he started, his voice cracking. I followed you. Jenna's eyes went wide. You what? I followed you, Mark repeated, gaining a little strength. You said you were going to the gym. You do that 3 times a week, but you didn't go to the gym. You drove to the other side of town to a self-storage facility. I waited until you left, and then I went to the manager. Since my name is on the joint account, you used to rent it, they let me in. The studio was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Jenna's face went from flushed to pale in a heartbeat. She knew what was coming. What was in the unit, Mark? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I had seen the photos. Boxes, Mark said, tears welling up, floor to ceiling. Some of them hadn't even been opened. Amazon boxes, department store bags, electronics, kitchen gadgets we don't need. It was like a graveyard of stuff. Thousands of dollars of stuff just sitting in the dark. And she's been paying $200 a month just to store it. I signaled to the control room, and the photos popped up on the giant screen behind us. It looked like the back room of a warehouse. Piles of unboxed blenders, designer boots still in the wrapping, toys for the kids that they were too old for now. It was a visual representation of a chaotic mind. Jenna, I said, pointing to the screen. Look at that. Really look at it. That is not a lifestyle. That is a sickness. That is hoarding. You are buying things for the momentary dopamine hit of the acquisition. And once you have it, the feeling fades. So you stick it in a box and go hunt for the next high. Meanwhile, your husband is working 10-hour days on construction sites, destroying his back to pay for boxes that sit in the dark. How do you justify that? Jenna was shaking her head, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an exit. I was going to sell it, she stammered. It's inventory. I'm going to start an online store. I'm going to make all the money back and more. Mark just didn't give me the time to get it set up. Jenna, get real, I said, my voice sharp. There is no store. There is no business plan. There is just you, a credit card, and an inability to sit with your own feelings. You are calling it inventory to keep from calling it a mistake. You are spinning a narrative to protect your ego, but your ego is writing checks your life can't cash. You are escalating this behavior to the point of no return. You have hidden debt, hidden accounts, and now hidden real estate in the form of a storage unit. You are living a double life. Mark turned to her, and the pain in his voice was heartbreaking. I found a foreclosure notice in the mail yesterday, Jenna. I hid it because I didn't want to embarrass you here, but we are done. We are literally done. The bank is taking the house in 30 days if we don't come up with $5,000. And I don't have it. I checked the savings, it's gone. You took the kids' college fund, didn't you? Jenna froze. The influencer mask slipped completely. The confident woman who walked out here in the designer shoes was gone, replaced by a terrified child caught with her hand in the cookie jar. She didn't answer him, but the silence was the loudest confession I have ever heard. You took the college fund? Brenda gasped, looking at her daughter with genuine shock. Jenna, how could you? Stop judging me, Jenna screamed, finally snapping. She stood up, her hands balling into fists. You all just sit there and judge me. You don't know what it's like. You don't know the pressure I feel to be perfect, to make everything look perfect. If I don't keep it up, who am I? Just some housewife in a crumbling house? I matter. I matter. You matter because of who you are, not what you buy, I countered, raising my voice to match hers. But you are trying to fill a bottomless pit with material things. It will never be full, Jenna. Never. You can buy every bag in Paris, and you will still wake up in the morning feeling empty because you aren't fixing the leak, you're just bailing water. And right now, the ship is going down. She stood there, chest heaving, tears finally streaming down her face, ruining the professional makeup she had spent an hour on. This was the escalation point. We had hit the wall. The secrets were out. The foreclosure, the college fund, the storage unit, it was all on the table. The deception was absolute. Sit down, I said firmly, because we are not done. You are standing at a cliff and you think you can fly. I am here to tell you that gravity is real and you are about to hit the ground. You have decimated your family's future for a fantasy. The question is, do you love that fantasy more than you love these people sitting next to you? Because right now, your actions say you do. Jenna sank back into the chair, sobbing into her hands. It wasn't the polite, pretty crying she probably practiced. It was ugly, guttural sobbing. It was the sound of reality crashing through the delusional walls she had built. But even now, I had to wonder, was she crying because she was sorry, or was she crying because she was caught? There is a profound difference, and my job was to find out which one it was before we ran out of time. I looked at the audience. They were stunned. No one was laughing at the lipstick on a pig jokes now. This was the tragedy of modern consumerism wrapped around a human heart. We took a break, but I didn't leave the stage. I sat there watching her, calculating my next move. I had to break her down to build her back up. But with someone this entrenched in denial, sometimes the break is irreparable. We came back from the break, and the energy in the studio had shifted from tension to a heavy, suffocating sorrow. Jenna had stopped the loud sobbing, but she was trembling, picking at a loose thread on her expensive trousers, a tiny imperfection she would have normally found intolerable, now the only thing keeping her grounded. Mark was staring at the floor, defeated. Brenda was looking at the audience, checking to see who was watching her, still worried about appearances even as her daughter's life imploded. I leaned in. It was time for the confrontation. No more dancing around the edges. We had to go straight into the eye of the storm. Jenna, I said, my voice softer but intense, look at me. She hesitated, then lifted her red-rimmed eyes. The defiance was gone, replaced by fear. You said earlier that you matter. You screamed it, I matter. And I want you to know that I agree with you, you do matter. But here is the hard truth. You don't believe it. You don't believe you matter unless you are draped in brands and driving a luxury car. You have outsourced your self-worth to the mall. And because you don't believe you have value, you are bankrupting your family to buy a costume that fools the world into thinking you do. She sniffled, wiping her nose with a tissue. I just want them to have the best. I want people to look at us and see that we made it. Made what? I asked. Made a mess? Because that is what people see now. You think you are projecting success, but real success is peace of mind. Real success is a husband who trusts you. Real success is knowing your children's future is secure. You have traded all of that for stuff, for inventory. I turned to Mark. Mark, you are an enabler. I know that hurts to hear, but it is the truth. You have been so afraid of her anger, so afraid of rocking the boat, that you let her drill a hole in the bottom of it. You knew something was wrong. You saw the packages, you saw the bills, but you stayed quiet to keep the peace. How is that peace working out for you now? Mark shook his head. It's not. It's hell. Exactly, I said. You cannot be a passenger in your own marriage. You have to take the wheel. And that means you have to be willing to lose this marriage to save it. You have to be willing to say no more. Not maybe, not let's discuss it, but no more. Are you ready to do that? Mark looked at Jenna, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw a steel in his spine that wasn't there before. Yes, he said. Jenna, I love you. God knows I love you. But I am not going to let you ruin us. I am not going to let you steal from our kids again. I am taking over the finances, all of them. The cards are getting cut up today. The storage unit is getting sold. If you want to stay in this house, if we can even keep this house, you don't spend a dime without me knowing. Not a dime. Jenna flinched as if he had slapped her. She looked to her mother for support, but I cut that cord immediately. Brenda, don't you say a word, I warned. Do not undermine him. You have done enough damage with your investment pieces and your criticism. If you want to help your daughter, you will support her husband in stopping this madness. You will not buy her gifts. You will not sneak her money. If she comes to you crying because she can't buy a new dress, you will offer her a hug, not a check. Can you do that? Brenda looked affronted, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. I suppose if that's what's needed, it is what is vital, I said. It is oxygen. I turned back to Jenna. Here is the deal. You are an addict. You are addicted to spending. The brain scans of a shopaholic look just like the brain scans of a cocaine addict. It hits the same pleasure centers. And just like any addict, you need detox. You need rehab. I am not talking about a spa day. I am talking about serious rewiring your brain work. Jenna looked terrified. Rehab? For shopping? For the hole in your soul, Jenna, I said. For the belief that you are not enough. For the compulsion that drives you to destroy everything you love just to feel a fleeting moment of power. You need to learn who Jenna is when she isn't buying things. You don't know that woman. You haven't met her since you were 6 years old. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was at a crossroads. One path led back to the denial, to the secrets, to the inevitable divorce and bankruptcy. The other path led to hard work, humiliation, and vulnerability. It was the harder road, but it was the only one that went anywhere. I don't know if I can stop, she whispered. It was the most honest thing she had said all day. That is why you need help, I said. You can't do it alone. You have proven that. Your best thinking got you here. It's time to borrow someone else's thinking. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. I have arranged for you to go to a treatment center that specializes in behavioral addictions. They deal with this specific pathology. It is not a vacation. You will not have your phone. You will not have your credit cards. You will have therapy, group sessions, and a lot of hard truths. While you are there, financial experts are going to work with Mark to see if we can salvage your home and restructure this debt. But this offer is a one-time deal. You say yes right now, or you walk out that door on your own. And if you walk out, Mark is going home to pack your bags. I looked at Mark to confirm. He nodded, tears in his eyes, but his jaw set. He's right, Jenna. I can't do this anymore. You go, or we're done. The silence stretched out. It felt like an hour, but it was probably only 10 seconds. The entire audience was holding its breath. Jenna looked at her shoes, those beautiful, expensive shoes that represented everything that was wrong with her life. Then she looked at Mark. Then she looked at me. I'll go, she said, her voice barely audible. Say it like you mean it. I pushed. Say it so your husband believes you. She took a deep breath, and her face crumbled into genuine anguish. I'll go. I don't want to lose my family. I'll go. It was a breakthrough, but a fragile one. Admitting you have a problem is step 1. Doing the work is steps 2 through 12. Good, I said. That is the first smart decision you have made in a long time. But let's be clear about the outcome here. This isn't a magic wand. You aren't going to come back in 30 days cured. You are going to come back with tools. You are going to have to wake up every single day and choose your family over your addiction. You are going to have to drive past the mall and feel the pull and keep driving. You are going to have to look at yourself in the mirror without the designer clothes and learn to like what you see. That is a lifelong project. I turn to the camera. You know, we live in a society that tells us we are what we have. It tells us that happiness is just one purchase away. That is a lie. It is a lie that sells products, but it bankrupts souls. Jenna is a casualty of that lie, but she is also a volunteer. She volunteered for the deception. Today, she is trying to resign from that job, but the road ahead is steep. I looked back at the family. Mark, you have a role here too. You have to learn to lead. You have to learn that saying no is an act of love. And Brenda, you have to learn that your daughter doesn't need your money. She needs your acceptance of her imperfections. If you keep pushing her to be perfect, you will push her right back into debt. We wrapped up the segment. The audience applauded, but it was a subdued applause. They knew, and I knew, that the real drama was just starting. The cameras would turn off, and Jenna would have to get in a car and go to a place where she couldn't hide behind a label. Backstage, after the show, I spoke to them one last time. Jenna was wiping off her makeup, looking younger and more vulnerable than she had on stage. Dr. Phil, she said, "What if I fail?" "You only fail if you stop trying," I told her. "You are going to slip. You might buy something you shouldn't, but the difference is, do you hide it or do you own it? Do you let the shame spiral you or do you get back on track?" Perfection is not the goal, Jenna. Authenticity is. Be real. Be messy. Be broke for a while if you have to, but be you. She nodded, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of a real person behind the facade. Mark put his arm around her, awkwardly, hesitantly, but he was there. That's what marriage is, standing in the rubble and deciding to rebuild together. As I walked down the hallway to my dressing room, I thought about the thousands of Jennas out there, people drowning in debt to impress people they don't even like. It is a tragedy of the modern age. We have full closets and empty hearts. Jenna has a chance now, a fighting chance, but she has to do the work. And as I always say, the only person you can control is you. She has to decide every morning that she is worth more than a price tag. And that is a lesson you can't buy, no matter what your credit limit is. Some time passed after that taping, as it always does. The lights of the studio fade, the audience goes home, and the guests are left with the silence of their own lives. We sent Jenna off to that treatment center, a place nestled in the quiet hills where there are no malls, no online shopping apps, and certainly no credit cards. For 30 days, she was stripped of the armor she had spent a lifetime forging. No designer bags, no $400 shoes, just sweatpants and the raw, uncomfortable work of facing herself. My team kept me updated, of course. The first week was hell. That is the only word for it. She fought the counselors. She fought the process. She tried to charm and manipulate her way out of group sessions just like she had tried to charm her way out of debt. She bartered with other patients, trying to trade cafeteria snacks for favors, still trying to transact, still trying to buy her way into a comfort zone. It was ingrained in her DNA. But the staff there, they've seen it all. They held the line. They didn't buy the act. And slowly, painfully, the act started to crumble because it had no audience. I brought them back for a follow-up not too long ago. I wanted to see the result, the outcome, not just for the show, but for my own peace of mind. I wanted to know if the seed we planted had actually taken root in that scorched earth. When Jenna walked onto the stage this time, the difference was subtle but profound. She wasn't wearing a sackcloth. She still looked put together, but the frantic energy was gone. The desperation to impress was dialed down. She was wearing a simple blouse and jeans, no logo in sight. Her hair was done, but not helmet perfect. She looked human. She looked like a mom, not a mannequin. Mark walked out next to her, and his posture had changed. He wasn't slouching. He wasn't looking at the floor. He walked beside her, not behind her. That spatial relationship told me that the power dynamic had shifted. He had taken the reins back, or at least they were holding them together. So I said, leaning back in my chair, "It has been 90 days since you left this stage. You did the 30 days inpatient, and you've been back home for 2 months. How is the air out there in the real world?" Jenna took a deep breath. She didn't smile that fake camera-ready smile she used to have. She looked thoughtful. "It's quiet," she said. "It's hard, Dr. Phil. I'm not going to lie and say I'm cured. I wake up some mornings and I feel that itch. I feel stressed or sad, and my thumb automatically goes to where the shopping app used to be on my phone, but it's not there. And Mark has the passwords to everything else." "And how does that feel?" I ask. "Does it feel like a cage, like you said before?" "At first, yes," she admitted. "I felt like a child. I resented him. I resented you. But then the bills came in last month. And for the first time in 10 years, we could pay them, all of them. And there was no pit in my stomach, no running to the mailbox before Mark got home, no hiding statements in the laundry basket. The relief, it was better than any high I ever got from a pair of shoes." I turned to Mark. "And you look like a man who has slept for the first time in a decade." Mark actually chuckled. A real, genuine laugh. "I'm sleeping better. Yeah. It hasn't been a picnic. We fight. We fight a lot, actually. But we're fighting about real things now, not secrets. She gets mad when I say no to something, but she accepts it, and we sold the stuff in the storage unit." "You did? This was a major step. How did that go?" "I cried through most of it," Jenna confessed, her voice wavering slightly. "Seeing strangers pick through my things, offering $5 for something I paid $50 for, it was humiliating. It made me physically sick to see how much money I had wasted. It was like watching my children's college fund being sold off at a yard sale for pennies on the dollar." "That is a painful lesson," I said, nodding, "but it is a necessary one. That humiliation is the tuition you paid for this education. You needed to feel the weight of that loss so you don't repeat it. You can't just swipe a card and make the feelings go away anymore. You have to sit in the mess." Then we brought up the third leg of the stool again, Brenda. I was curious about this one. Patterns are generational, and grandmothers are often the hardest to change because they've been practicing their bad habits for a lot longer. Brenda joined us, and interestingly, she didn't bring a gift. She sat down, looking a bit uncomfortable, clutching her purse tightly in her lap. "Brenda," I said, "how are you handling the new regime? No more secret shopping trips? No more investment pieces?" Brenda pursed her lips. "It's been an adjustment," she said stiffly. "I feel bad showing up empty-handed. I feel like I'm not doing my job as a grandmother or a mother. If I don't bring something, what good am I?" There it was, the core wound exposed. "Brenda," I said gently, "you are good because you are present. Your value is in your time, your wisdom, your love, not your wallet. Have you tried just being there, just sitting on the floor and playing with the grandkids without a new toy involved?" I I tried, she said, looking down. It felt awkward. I didn't know what to talk about. That is the work, I told her. That awkwardness is a space where the real relationship grows. You have to fill that silence with yourself, not with plastic. And Jenna needs you to be strong. If you cave, if you slip her a 20 or buy her a dress, you are handing a drink to an alcoholic. You understand that? I do, Brenda whispered. Mark reminds me. He's very strict. Good for you, Mark, I said, giving him a nod of approval. You are the gatekeeper. You have to be. We talked about the future. The road is still long. They are still in debt, though the bleeding has stopped. The trust is fragile. Like a vase that has been glued back together, it holds water, but you can still see the cracks. Jenna is attending weekly support groups. She has a sponsor. She is learning to find dopamine in other things, exercise, reading, cooking, things that create value rather than consume it. But I wanted to leave them and the audience with a realistic perspective. This isn't a fairy tale ending. There is no sunset they are riding off into. They are riding off into a traffic jam of bills, repair work, and emotional triggers. Jenna, I said in closing, you have done the hardest thing a person can do. You looked in the mirror and admitted the reflection was ugly. You stopped blaming Mark, you stopped blaming your childhood, and you took ownership. That is maturity. But don't get cocky. The addiction is doing push-ups in the parking lot while you are in the meeting. It is waiting for you to have a bad day. It is waiting for you to feel lonely or unappreciated. I know, she said. I'm scared every day. Fear is good, I told her. Fear keeps you sharp. Use it. Don't let it paralyze you. Let it mobilize you. Keep your circle tight. Keep your secrets at zero. And remember, every time you don't buy something, you are buying your freedom back. You are buying your marriage back. You are buying your self-respect back. And that is an investment that actually pays dividends. As they walked off the stage, I didn't see a conquered problem. I saw a work in progress. I saw two people who were tired, battered, but still standing. And in my line of work, that is a victory. It's not the flashy confetti drop victory of a game show. It's the quiet, gritty victory of real life. I turned to the camera for the final thought. You know, we spend our lives accumulating. We gather stuff like squirrels gathering nuts for a winter that never comes. We fill our garages, our attics, our storage units, thinking that more is the answer to who am I? But more is just a drug. It numbs the question. It doesn't answer it. Jenna's story isn't just about shopping. It's about the terrifying act of being enough. Just you. Without the props, without the costumes. It's about standing naked in the truth of your own life and saying, this is me and I am worthy of love. If you can do that, you don't need the credit card. You don't need the validation. You are free. And freedom, well, that's the only thing in life that is truly priceless. The credits rolled. The lights dimmed. Another story told, another life dissected. But this one stuck with me because beneath the absurdity of the inventory and the debt, there was a universal struggle. We are all trying to fill the void. Some use food, some use alcohol, some use anger, Jenna used shoes, but the solution is always the same. You have to stop filling it and start feeling it. Only then can you begin to heal. I gathered my notes, tapped them on the desk, and walked off the set. Tomorrow, there would be another guest, another crisis, another puzzle to solve. But for today, for Jenna and Mark, there was a chance, and sometimes a chance is all you get. It is quiet in the studio after the audience leaves. The energy that fuels the confrontation dissipates, leaving behind a kind of static silence. I often sit in that silence for a moment before heading to my car, just thinking about the gravity of what we unpacked. With Jenna and Mark, the silence felt heavier than usual. It felt like the air after a thunderstorm cleaner, maybe, but charged with the knowledge that the storm could always circle back. I kept thinking about the children. We didn't bring them on stage, and we never would in a situation like this, but they are the invisible passengers in this wreck. They are the ones who have been watching their mother equate love with logos. They are the ones who have felt the tension radiate off their father like heat off pavement. If Jenna stays the course, if Mark holds the line, those kids have a shot at learning a different language of love. They might learn that security comes from stability, not from a shopping bag. But if she relapses, if the addiction wins, they will inherit the debt, not just the financial debt, but the emotional debt. They will grow up thinking that anxiety is the baseline of existence. That is the stake we are playing for. It isn't about the money. It never is. It is about the legacy. You have to understand, people like Jenna are not villains. They are wounded. Somewhere along the line, she learned that she wasn't enough. That is a terrifying feeling to carry around every day. It is like walking around with a hole in your chest and you are desperately trying to stuff things into it to stop the wind from blowing through. The tragedy is that the cure she chose, the spending, was the very thing making the hole bigger. It is the paradox of addiction. The medicine is the poison. I have hope for them, but it is a cautious hope. Recovery is not a straight line. It is a jagged scar. There will be days when Jenna feels ugly because she isn't wearing the latest trend. There will be days when Mark wants to give in just to stop the fighting. That is where the rubber meets the road. That is where the real show happens, in the privacy of their kitchen, over the checkbook, in the quiet moments of the night. We gave them the map. We gave them the compass, but they are the ones who have to walk the path. And that is the hardest truth of all. I can't live their lives for them. I can only turn on the light so they can see the mess. What they do with the broom is up to them.